guys don't ever hear my voice, my name's Brian. I'm the nerd that puts the epic narrative together. Thanks for listening, by the way. I'm interrupting to let you guys know about a contest that we're running for a new logo for the epic narrative. If you're a fan of the epic narrative and you happen to be good at graphic design or digital art and you'd like to take a crack at designing a new logo for us, we would love that. We're going to be running a contest starting Monday, March 7th, 2022 through Sunday, April 10th, 2022. You can submit any art designs that you have for a new logo for the epic narrative to thebobswitzer@gmail.com. And if we think it represents the epic narrative well and we fall in love with it, you will win a $50 Apple Pay credit that we will send over to you, or an equivalent if you don't have an Apple product, and it will become the new logo for us. And we will announce the winner a couple weeks after submissions close. Sorry to interrupt. Back to the epic narrative.
Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the epic narrative.
Well, it is time again, and thank you so much for showing up. We are going to continue this story. We left Cain just in a world of hurt. Of course, it's self-inflicted, but, it's still painful. A lot of times people do that, right? They make choices. They feel the pain of it. And then sometimes, those of us, maybe not all of us. I mean, I try not to do this, but, if you don't have empathy for them, if you don't have any sort of even sympathy for them, you are just stuck. Well, they are. They're just stuck in their pain. They have nowhere to go. So it's important that we understand where people are. And I think we see that in today's episode, especially from the position of God. He knows what Cain's going through. So if you remember, Cain, there's a curse that comes on Cain, right? It doesn't come from God. God reveals it. Now you are under a curse, driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be restless, a wanderer on the earth. So Cain loses everything. He loses his livelihood, loses the stability of a home life. Because of what he's done, people aren't going to trust him. His leadership role within the family is going to be taken away from him merely because, again, no one can trust him. The ground won't speak to him, which I find fascinating in the whole realm of like creation and connection to what's around you. There was such a natural connection. People were so used to feeling the connection with creation that when Cain committed murder, the earth was offended. The earth sat back and said, whoa, what is this? Like, this is not what what we're designed to absorb. We're not designed to absorb the blood of humans. We're not designed to take the creation that was formed in the image of God, our creator. We are not designed to take that blood, which, wow, like that the ramifications of that concept is huge. And all of that is contained in these verses. And we roll right over them so many times because, well, when I say we, I usually speak of preachers because I do love to preach. But we roll over them quickly because we're usually trying to make a point. We're not trying to actually tear apart and enjoy the entire epic narrative. Self-promotion. It's so rude. Anyways, preachers miss it. They miss it because they're trying to get to they're trying to get to a point, usually because they're connected to this concept of God cursing Cain for murdering his brother. And in being that way, in looking for that point to make, they miss the story. But there's a lot here. So in all that's going on, Cain says to the Lord, my punishment is more than I can bear. So when I break down this word punishment, this is very important. And keep in mind, that within this, there's time between these verses. Oh my goodness. I just, again, I know I'm wired for time. It's so like, it's actually annoying to my wife, and my children all know it. They're so funny. Like you see me at a wedding, right? I actually, anywhere where there's a schedule, a wedding, a conference, even a Sunday morning service, like if people who write out schedules that are not aware of time, and they write something like, we'll have a meeting from 9:30 to 11:30. Be at lunch, but at 11, lunch starts at 11:30. It goes to 12:15. Then we're gonna have whatever. And I think, no, you can't move whatever. You can't move anybody from one place to a cafeteria. And in some conference centers, I don't know if you've ever been to some of these large conference centers, like where you eat is so far away from where you meet. It's insane. It's insane. But people don't think that way, right? They just think, well, we'll meet till then. And then they got 45 minutes for lunch, and then we'll meet again. And it's like, no, like you need a minimum of 20 minutes to get anybody from one place to another place, and you gotta give them time to figure out what they're gonna eat. They gotta make their plate, or they gotta wait for their plate, or they gotta put in their order, or they gotta, even if they're just picking up bag lunches, it's all time. And then so many times that happens with weddings. People will be like, the wedding starts at 2, be done at 3, pictures from 3 to 4. 4 o'clock starts the reception. It's like, no, Troy, oh God, no, this is not, there's no way this is real. There's no way this is real. People are not thinking, they're just thinking, we have the venue till this time. We start, oh, come on. Anyways, all right. Bob, I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. I was telling the story because I'm just rolling through all the various examples of it I could go, and finally the engineer gets my attention, looking at me. Where are you going? How did a wedding get into the story of Cain? Let me think about that. How did those? Oh, time. There's time between every verse. So let's think about the time. All right. We have verse 13. Cain says to the Lord, "My punishment is more than I can bear." Wow. Whoa. Are you seeing this? Cain goes to the Lord. Guess who hasn't abandoned Cain? That would be the Lord. Guess who is still in communication and relationship with Cain? The murderer of his brother. God. God's still there. Listen, again, the pattern. God is not afraid or offended of sin. He is not going to walk away from you. Now, the choice you make is the choice you're free to make. And the results are the results. But there's always, the goodness of God is always there for you. Just like with Adam and Eve, right? He did not just say, well, let's erase that and pretend it didn't happen. He said, all right, these are the results of your choices. So in my goodness, I'm going to make sure that you're well protected. I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to talk with you. I'm going to walk you through this. Beautiful picture. Cain, same thing. Cain's like, when he hears what he's done, when he hears the results of what he's done, I think that there's some time here. Like, he goes home. And it's like, how do you communicate this to your wife? How do you communicate this to your parents? Like, how did the word get out? Who found Abel? That happened. I'm guessing some of the beasts of the field came over. They were like, what is this? What is this? They'd never seen a dead human. Had no idea. Creation's crying out. Okay, not to be goofy, there was a disturbance. We'll call it in the frequency of creation. And people who were in tune with creation knew something was wrong. The news of what Cain did had to have spread because of the rest of the verses that we're going to cover here. Like there's stuff going on here in this verse or between these verses. And Cain goes back to the Lord and he says, I can't bear this punishment. Now, it is important, I believe, in this story to define the word punishment. Because a lot of us define it like we've grown up with it. So like for me, punishment was I hope no one gets arrested for this. I got spanked, okay? I don't mind it. I'm not scarred by it. My parents were they weren't rageaholics. They didn't just, haul off and hit me. There was conversation, there was explanation, and then there was execution. That's horrible. Bob, stop that. I was not executed. Okay, punishment was executed. Fine. All right. I just want to say all that to say, please don't send like sympathy notes, and please don't go after my mother. She's awesome. Like I said, I can't remember a bad thing that bad aspect of my childhood. So that's punishment for me. A lot of you out there that are listening think punishment means, I wasn't allowed to, the Wi-Fi was shut down for 2 hours. Like it was horrible. It was horrible, devastating. Both physically, like I writhed on the ground and banged my head against the wall, and emotionally I was so empty and lost and disconnected from the world. Okay, great. Whatever punishment, we just I was mocking. You're right. I shouldn't have done that. It is tough for kids to lose the Wi-Fi. I know, Bob. Stop. Okay. Yeah, I thought it was a little funny. Yeah, I know I'm alone in my basement, and I think everything's funny because I'm the only one listening. Okay, back to the story. So when we look at the word punishment, it is good to break it down because it is a word that we quickly connect to our personal experience. The word punishment, aon. It's, I don't know how to say it. I really don't. I'm sorry. But I do know how to spell it. And it's right there in front of me. This is how it's translated. It's translated punishment. It's also iniquity, depravity, guilt, the act, and the consequences of sin. What? It's both? Yeah, it's both. Seth, he comes later. Cain is saying to God, this whole deal is too much for me. He's not saying, God, you beat me up too much. God, you spanked me so hard. God, this is more than I can bear. He's saying, everything I did, from the murder of my brother, probably even prior to that, the hatred that I developed in my heart, the selfishness that I thought was going to be my, solution, the pride, the arrogance, the murder, and then the results of it. I've lost everything. I can't bear this, because it refers to both the behavior and the actual way that the phrase is often like literally translated is to sit on your own crooked path. What a great picture. What a great word picture of the results of sin. You sit in your own crooked path. This was the concept of punishment when they wrote these words in the original. It was the idea that punishment didn't come from God. Punishment came from the path that you created. You got to sit in the path that you created. It refers to the whole cycle of like hurt people, of broken relationships, the consequences of what you've done, right? The relationships that you've broken, the people that you've hurt. Think of the family of Cain. Think of Adam and Eve when they find out that one of their sons murdered one of their sons. That's tough. This family was going through trauma. And Abel's family was going through trauma. And they wanted retaliation. They wanted something to occur. They wanted some form of justice, I have no doubt. And Cain doesn't know what to do. And I think it's awesome that he goes to the Lord. He's like, God, I can't take this. I don't know what to do. So to punish someone is to, like I said, to put the consequences of everything upon them, to let them sit in those consequences. This is also a phrase that comes from the same word, and I slow down to make this point. Because it's used in Scripture, and people, they don't really have a whole lot to connect to it, right? But the phrase would be to bear your iniquity. Punishment is not from God; it is from sin. That's where punishment comes from. And Cain says, "My punishment is more than I can bear." Cain understands that all the stuff he's dealing with, all the implications, all the layers of relationships that are broken, the lack of trust, the lack of authority now that he has, the lack of farming, the lack of contribution to the family. Listen, Cain still needed to eat, so who's feeding him? And when Cain's family went to go get food, and people would look at him and think, I have, oh man, why should we feed you? Your husband's a murderer. And she's probably like, yeah, but my children, like, we're cousins. Like, you know me. I can't explain what happened. This is an awesome opportunity to use your imagination. God's response is also really important. God's response is beautiful. Let me get into that. All right? Cain comes to him. I've lost my job. I've lost my connection to you. Like, it wasn't just I can't farm anymore. This was Cain's communion and connection to creation. This is what he did. This is how he stayed and connected to the radio station, the frequency of creation. He's like, I can't do it anymore. I go out to the ground, I try and do what I know to do, and the ground won't respond. It's rebelling, not rebelling. It's hurt. I hurt this. I hurt the connection of creation. Imagine how painful that is. Right? Cain wakes up in the morning after a fitful night of rest. He gets up in the morning and he's like, what should I do? Wife's like, I don't know. What are you going to do? He's like, I guess I'm going to go farming. I'm going to go do what I normally do. I'm going to go take care of that. And he goes out and the grain isn't responding. It's clearly, dying off. The corn doesn't look healthy. And he remembers what the Lord had told him the day before. Cain, the earth is going to not bring anything out for you anymore. Like the earth what you did, the earth is responding to this. It's a broken relationship, which sin often does. So Cain lost this. He's feeling very disoriented, very disconnect. I mean, when you lose connection to something that you're used to connecting to, especially a person, you don't know what to do. You lose connection with a place that you always went to feel not secure, to feel like everything in the world is good, like you're sound, like you're stable. That's the word. The stability of life was gone from Cain. And I know a lot of people feel that way when they garden, even if it's little things in their plants. I know what gardening is. I mean, in their apartment or whatever, they have things that just, they look at it and it's life. They look at it and it's life that they're sustaining. It feels they feel connected. They feel there's a soundness, a foundational mindset that's like, yes, at least that's doing well. Like the rest of my life might be bad, but look at my flowers. So he realizes, that, and he says, well, all right, let's just keep going. There's a life of like shame, disconnection, not just from creation, but from people. He's literally wandering around during the day, and he's wondering, well, is somebody going to kill me? Like, to have those thoughts. And we know this from later on. I'll get there in these verses. He realizes that no one trusts him. But not just that, he realizes there are people who want justice. Not just Abel's family, his wife, his kids, his sons, but people who liked Abel, people who worked with Abel, people who bought and traded things with Abel. All the flocks that Abel oversaw. They're the people that took, that helped him do that. They're impacted by the choice that Cain made. Cain's becoming very isolated because he doesn't trust people, because people don't trust him. He doesn't know what to do. He was kind of hoping that if he killed Abel, remember when he thought if he killed Abel, his competition would be gone. God would accept him. Everything would be better if Abel was dead. And it didn't work out. I mean, this is so classic. This is so classic for so many people. If I just do this, everything else will fall into place. And then they do that, and it's like, wait, you didn't calculate all the other ramifications? You didn't calculate all the other choices when, people come to me sometimes and they want a divorce. And I'm not anti-divorce. Trust me. But what do? One of the first things I do is I start saying, all right, let's just think through what the rest of your life will be like. Not because I don't want them to get it, it's because I want them to be aware of it. Because I've also met people who sit, with me and they'll say, I had no idea it would be like this. I really thought it would be easier, but it's far more difficult now. Anyways, all right. Enough about those. Yes, let's not get distracted. Focus. So he's wondering and he's wandering. He's disconnected, unstable, isolated, probably hungry. He knows he's causing problems for his wife and his kids. He just doesn't know what to do. So he goes to God. I find that beautiful. I find that awesome. I find that so typical of people when they're in a bad spot. They go to God. And you know what? Great. I think that's great. Like, never feel bad about going to God when your life is rough. Not so many. I have met people who are like, I can't go to God now. Like, I got to get my life straight. No, go to God now. Good grief. Don't wait till your life is in order. What kind of God can only deal with that? I gotta make a few things right, and then I'll go talk to him. No, talk to him now. Let him help you get it in order. Come on, people. Sorry, I needed a drink of water. You're like, Bob, you swallow all the time anyways. I know. It's weird, isn't it? You don't notice that I swallow a whole lot until you're listening to me in your ears. My producer does a great job of getting most of those out, but that was a pretty good pause. He'll probably catch that one, and you won't even know. You won't even know. All right. What's God's... well, we'll continue. Let's just go to the next verse. Verse 14. Today... Oh, he's blaming God for this. You are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. You know what that sounds like? Someone who's depressed. someone who has completely lost connection to what's going on around them. Somebody whose perspective is literally only their problems. And somebody who's like that definitely loves to be the victim. Remember, he was the victim when he killed Abel. This is all Abel's fault. If Abel wasn't so whatever, then I'd be fine. Take out Abel, my life is good. So he goes kind of right back to that. He's like, he blames this on God. You're driving me from the land. No, Cain, you spilled your brother's blood. The land is responding to you. I'll be hidden from your presence. Not true. I'm literally right here. You're talking to me. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Also, not true. Excuse me. You're a restless wanderer because you're sitting in your own sin. This is your punishment. And whoever finds you like that is an exaggeration. You exaggerate when you're depressed, when you're in a dark place. The number of times I've heard somebody in a dark, in a tough spot, they're dealing with depression, and they're like, nobody loves me, nobody wants to spend any time with me, nobody likes me. You know what? No one would notice if I was gone. No one would notice if I was dead. No one cared if it was over. Listen, it's not true. It feels true. I get that. I'm not denying the emotions of it, but it's not true. So God says, I love this, verse 15. But the Lord said to him, not so. I think he paused. I picture him putting his arm around Cain and just saying, no. It's Cain, listen to me. If anybody kills you, they're gonna receive like 7 times the results. Like, it's gonna be far worse for them. Far worse. Because there's always an escalation in these sort of things. It's never just boom, it's over. There's always an escalation. So I'm gonna, I'll make sure that it's known that if anybody kills you, it's gonna be really bad. And listen, in order to make sure that people know that it's you and that they shouldn't kill you, that you have my protection, I'm gonna put a mark on you, so that anybody who finds you would know not to kill you. This is not God's, embarrassment. This is God's protection. This is meant so that Cain can go stay in one place, so he wouldn't have to wander. Look at the goodness of God here. Cain says, I can't bear the punishment. You're driving me from the land, so I can't farm. I'm hidden from your presence, so I can't talk to you. Neither one of those are true. I'll be a restless wanderer, and whoever finds me kills me. God says, listen, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I'm going to put a mark on you so everyone knows if they kill you, that 1, they'll know who you are, and 2, if they kill you, it'll be 7 times worse for them because That's the way that creation is built. That's a a law of nature. Murder was never meant to be a part of nature. This is meant so that Cain can stay in one place. He can build a home again. This is meant so Cain would not be hunted. The word would go out. Listen, it's worse for anybody. Like, you think it's bad. Look at what happened to him. It'll happen 7 times more to you if you go. And it allows him now to find a place to, in essence, work the land. Maybe differently, but he's like, we are going to have connection. And listen, Cain, look what Cain did. He went out. It doesn't mean that he went out lonely and wandering, nowhere to go. Oh, God put a lightning bolt. I look like Harry Potter. That's not the Bob. I know. It was cheap. That was a cheap mark. Yeah, I know. All right. No, he went out. Where'd he go? He went and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. He went to a place that was already established. It says he went out from the Lord's presence. It wasn't like he separated from God. It just means that conversation was over. And he realized God's goodness was still with him. He realized that God's presence hadn't left him. And in that goodness, he's like, I get it. I'm now literally a marked man for protection from God. And he made a plan to start over. He moves to a new land. Verse 17, him and his wife get it on. She becomes pregnant. She gives birth to Enoch. Cain then building a city. He named it after his son Enoch. What? How do you build a city if there's like only 12 people on the planet? No, this is again one of those phrases, one of those words in the word that means there was a whole lot of people on the planet. There was a whole lot of activity on the world. He did not go to a land where no one existed and build a city. He went to a land where people were already there. It was it was new. And yes, he was marked. But what people knew by the mark was, listen, God hasn't abandoned him. God did not kill him. So neither can we, neither should we. That was what the mark expressed to everyone around him. God still wants this man alive. God has forgiven him. God still has a relationship with him. These are the pictures of God that are often missed in this story because we clergy, we often go back just to Genesis 3, to the sin, and we say, see how bad this is. No, we need to go all the way back to the beginning. This is who God is. So Cain gets together with his wife. He makes it not one baby, and you don't build a city for one baby. There were babies coming out. He stayed there for many, many years. He built a community. He built a city. He used his creative energies like he used to use in the farming world. He used in the building world. Listen, I know a lot of farmers, and many of them are incredible builders, incredibly creative builders. They solve problems in they'll whatever in their building of things. They'll be like, yeah, well, this part wasn't square, so what I did was. And you look at it and think, wow, that was brilliant. Like, what in the world? I would never put it together like that. I don't know if you've ever been to like an old Quaker village. There's a few of them on the planet that are still around. I went to one. They had this circle barn. It was so creative. The hay was kept in the middle in this huge open cylinder. The cows came in underneath. They would eat the hay and then they would move the cows, but it was like they didn't have to keep bringing hay in. They just stacked it up. Like that alone blew my mind. I was like, this is brilliant. This is a brilliant thought. I picture Cain like that. He just has brilliant creative thoughts. He's building the city. He names it after his son Enoch. He's very practical. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of people. It says he named it after his son Enoch, and then we go through a list of people that are born. Now Enoch is a very unique individual, and he's noted throughout Scripture, and in legend, and he actually has his own books out. I think I might have mentioned it earlier when I talked about angels. The books of Enoch, fascinating read. Fascinating read. He's an amazing character. But to Enoch was born Irad, and Irad was the father of... okay, we're going to stop trying to read these words. Oh, but eventually we get to Lamech, and Lamech married, 2 women. You were allowed to do that? Well, it's in the Bible. Yeah, listen, I would not recommend marrying 2 women. Just, It was not the design. It wasn't it wasn't the pattern that God put in place with creation. It just wasn't. And it wasn't, is it an option? Yes. At least here it is. So he married 2 women. And they were both making babies. And it says that he gave birth to this guy, Jabal. He was the father of those who lived in tents and raised livestock. What does that mean? He was somebody who kind of put together this whole migration mindset, where you would move from city to city and you'd take your flocks with you and you would follow, the river, and you'd keep the grass fresh, or you would drive your livestock to city and do business there and then continue. Fascinating concept, migration and movement between cities. The idea of trade going between cities. And another one he gave birth to was the father of all who played stringed instruments and pipes. Again, all means there was a lot of people. And it doesn't mean he gave birth to them all. It means he developed this amazing thing called instruments, stringed instruments. Those things are talk about, thousands of options. This guy's amazing. All stringed instruments came from him, and pipes. I mean, think about that little story. Whatever he was, a reed, was he blowing into a dried reed on the side of a river? How did he figure this out? What did he bump up against? This is the beauty and wonderfulness of what was going on. A couple more sons who forged all kinds of tools of bronze and iron. Wait, who figured out how to make bronze and iron? Who started melting rock? How did that come about? Was it just a couple guys having fun one night? They decided to make the fire as hot as possible. And in making the fire hot, they saw it started to soften the stone. Or it softened this thing that was in the stone. And then in the morning, as it cooled down, they found out how hard it was. They realized, wait a minute, we could do something with this. These are so much time in these verses. And Lamech said to his wives, listen to me. Hear my words. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. Well, that's quite an announcement. Thanks for letting us know. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times. What? He was just, trust me, this guy Lamech, he was just arrogant, selfish. Not the type of guy I think you'd want to work for. And probably not the type of guy you want to be married to. But he evidently took a guy out for wounding him. Got in a bar fight? I don't know. But Lamech killed him, and he pronounces his own judgment on anybody who touches him. In other words, he's making claim that his family will protect him. Now, this is not protection from God, but he's the first mob? I don't know. Maybe. If you kill me, then my family will take out 77 of your family. This is not this is not heading in a good direction as far as the culture of the day. And then the last couple of verses, it says Adam made love to his wife again. She gave birth to a son named Seth. They named him Seth. Sorry. God has granted me another child in place of Abel since Cain killed him. Seth also had a son, named him Enosh, and at that time people began to call on the name of the Lord. So we get a picture of the cultures of the day, the cities that are being developed, the population that's exploding. We're seeing movements of herds, migrations, north, south, east, and west. We see music becoming a part of life with stringed instruments and horned instruments or piped or instruments. We see tools being developed, bronze being developed, iron being developed, people understanding things about all the richness of what this earth was created to give us. We also see the development of murder and of selfishness and arrogance and judgment upon other people through Lamech. Like I'll 77 times you'll pay for the death of me. I am so much more valuable than Cain. But then we also see a picture of restoration in the last two verses where Adam and Eve are given another son and they named him Seth. And Seth had a son. And at that time people began to call on the name of the Lord. There's a distinction here. There's a distinctive development of families, those who are starting to call on themselves, like Lamech. I will pronounce judgment on others. I don't need God to mark me. I don't need God to protect me like he did Cain. And I'm far more important than Cain because I have multiple wives and multiple children and all kinds of stuff going on. But there is a culture that's also developing through Adam and Eve and through their son Seth that says people were beginning to to call on the name of the Lord. They were recognizing that the goodness of God had never left them, that God's presence was always available, that in watching what had happened to Cain, they were able to sit back and say, wow, let's stay connected to this frequency of creation. Let's stay connected to our Creator. And let's talk to him. And that's the goodness of God. In the midst of whatever else is going on, God's goodness is there. In the midst of your own crooked path that you made through the choices you made, through the choices that you've already made, through the sin that you've committed, he's like, you sit there. That's your punishment, but my goodness is still there. You call on me, I'm still there. My goodness is not offended by your sin. My goodness is not distant when you sin. My goodness is not unavailable to give you creative and protection and opportunity to see a new perspective where you can, like Cain did, you can finally get up high enough out of your own muck, off your own crooked path and say, I'm going to go start somewhere new. I can start somewhere new. That's a beautiful thing. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Epic Narrative. Have a good day, everyone.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
Good morning, everyone. It's morning here anyways, where we are currently sitting just outside of Mobile, Alabama. There are dogs barking and a slight breeze blowing, and there are people washing their RVs out here today. It's going on. It is going on, this RV life. But I don't know if it hit you as much as it hit me when I discovered the meaning of that word punished. How often that's attributed to some form of, we'll call it violence from God to the people who sinned or chose wrongly. We dealt with it obviously with the death of Abel. And it said, when Cain said, my punishment is too much for me to bear. That word punishment in the Jewish world is to sit on your own crooked path. To leave somebody with the results of their choices is the punishment. Their punishment is their choice. And it's not something that was in their definition, it's not something that would have come from an outside source. Outside sources might, if you cheated on your taxes, you might end up in prison. You could say, well, the government threw me in prison. No, the government followed through on something that they said they would do. If you chose to do something, you chose to do that thing, they followed through on their choice. They followed through on their promise. That's not government punishing you. That's you sitting in your own crooked path. And when you take that word punishment and you start applying it, this is where it really hit me. You start applying it to all the places where you see, quote, God punishing sinners in the Bible, and it starts to redefine the way you filter, God's goodness. Because so many people have, when I say people, I mean preachers as well. We look at people sitting in their own crooked path and we say, see, this is the goodness of God punishing these people because he's trying to keep them from doing it again. No, he put laws in the universe that's going to take care of that. And you can say, well, I know people who do all these bad things and they never get hurt. They never stop. They never feel the results of their choices. And I would say, you don't know that. You don't know that. Listen, I struggled with this. I did. I really did. I remember I was painting full-time on Cape Cod, and I was working on a multi-million-dollar beachfront home. And, it was owned by somebody from France. They hadn't been there in 3 years. They were looking to sell it so that, we were painting it all. Fine, whatever. I remember, very distinctly, there were photographs of these people doing things that I knew wouldn't be pleasing to the Lord. The sweet Lord would not be happy with their choices. I'll get into that some other time, but I remember being up on a ladder painting this guy's shutters and looking out over the ocean. Honestly, breathtaking mansion with a guest house that was bigger than the house I was living in. It was just beautiful. It was beautiful campus, beautiful place. And I remember thinking, God, how can these people have all this money and not do anything that honors you? Like, where's my favor? Where's my mansion? Where's my shoot? I'll take the guest house. Like, what is the deal? They don't suffer for what for their riches and all of their bad choices. And it was a really good time. I believe I was working alone because I remember going there for several weeks, just working my way around this house and the interactions that God and I had around it basically came down to this, that I don't know what their suffering is. I don't know what kind of troubles they go through. I don't know what their family life is like. I don't know if they have relationship that's beneficial. I don't know if they love each other, hate each other, wish each other. Maybe they're selling this because of a divorce. Like, there's so many things that I didn't know, and I'm sitting up there on the ladder, the beginning of the week going, it's not fair. And by the end of the 2 weeks, I remember coming down and loading everything up and realizing, wait, I am so freaking blessed. I have amazing children. At the time, none of them were married because they were way young. I have an amazing wife. I really have an amazing life. And I'm not sitting, I didn't have these words back then, but I'm not sitting in the crooked path that I've created. I'm able to walk a straight path, and the blessings of that can't be compared to the monetary benefits that this guy, was enjoying. And the awesome twist is, right, even when you're sitting on your own crooked path, the goodness of God is still there. It's just ready to lift you up. And I thought, what if these financial blessings for this guy out in France and his family, what if these financial blessings were actually invitations from the Lord to connect with him? What if he wanted this man, what if he was giving this man or this family the opportunity to look at it and say, wow, God has really blessed me. Somewhere in their own crooked path, they were going to look around and see that God was still with them, that his goodness was still with them. I remember another little example. There was a slightly different example, but same sort of concept. There was a guy that was going to put in. He owned multiple businesses, and he bought a piece of an empty building at the end of our neighborhood. Like right at the end of our neighborhood was a major retail roadway, 4-lane highway, all kinds of stores, right? And he bought one, but it was right at the end of our little residential area. And in that residential area, my family lived. And at the end of it, he bought this thing, and he owned two types of businesses. He owned kitchen shops, and he owned, shall we say, adult shops. Not necessarily the DVD shops, but the other kind of shops, the apparatus and enhancement. I don't know how else to say that without getting in trouble. So I remember, there were all kinds of prayers going up around this place, and so many of them were about judgment. They wanted to bring judgment on this guy, judgment on this guy, judgment on this guy. Because there were multiple churches that were praying that he wouldn't put one of these shops in that area, let alone at the end of our neighborhood. And I remember going down, I jogged down. At the time I could still run, and I would jog by, and I started praying, and instead of praying judgment, I started praying for blessing. And I prayed that his cooking shop, his kitchen shops, would receive so much more profit than his other stores, that he would want to put the kitchen store there, not his adult stores. And that's what he ended up doing. And I like to think I had something to do with that, because instead of praying judgment and death and whatever from God, which I don't think God does, I joined with heaven and prayed blessing and favor on him. And that's what he did. He ultimately put in a kitchen shop. And honestly, I shopped there a number of times. It was nice. It was really nice stuff. Anyways, all of that, I think, circles around to some thoughts I had. About just sitting in your own crooked path. God's goodness is there. And I think Cain recognized that eventually and went back to God and said, this is too much for me. I need a solution here. And God's goodness was to protect Cain and to give him opportunity to literally influence cities, i.e. cultures and government. That was his role. Like, it was far more of a blessing than if he was just, quote, just a farmer. And we often miss that because we're so excited to judge sin. We're so excited to beat someone down who made a bad choice that we miss this. We miss God's goodness, even though Cain had to deal with the crooked path he had created. Anyways, I hope you guys are having a great week. I hope you recognize the goodness of God right next to you, and I look forward to the next episode. Thanks, everyone.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.